Close the door. It's like you don't have a quorum.
I do have a quorum. Okay. We can go live. We are live. Okay, we are back. This is Senate Finance. And today we are going to be getting our first update from the Department of Public Service. I'm looking for my agenda, which I regularly lose. Just in what they have been up to since we left. And I have Commissioner Tierney on first, but I'm looking to see, do you guys have a
Yeah, I think
script?
that Commissioner Tierney will lead us off and then we'll go right in the order that you have us, I think.
Okay, so I have Commissioner Tierney.
Madam Chair,
There you are.
year 6, glad to see you. Glad to see all the committee members in good health.
Okay, first we need to get you a little louder. Can you remember how we did
A
that?
little louder. Is that on your end or my end?
Let's do it
You're
right
now
there.
loud. Do you want to have, with screen share, so we just have a little postage stamp size of you? Do you want to be bigger and we can take down the document and then put it back up? What works?
I think for my part, it would work just fine if you take the document down. I'm going to give you an overview and just a short plea, and then I'm going to pass this on to the folks I brought with me to give you the more detailed briefing on what we've been up to.
I'm trying to figure out who put it
Yeah,
out.
there we go.
Okay,
We have a staff.
back. All right,
And,
good. Too many people screen sharing, you have to find out who it is.
Does that work for you, Madam Chair?
That is good, yes. If we could get rid of us, it would be better. There we go. It's all yours.
Okay, and I believe you have 2 committee members who are new to the committee, but they are not new to the business of energy and telecommunications. I want to say these are Senator Rom Hinsdale and Senator Chittenden, I believe.
Yep.
Is that correct?
That is correct. It
Okay.
said from Hinsdale is not back yet.
Okay.
She chairs
Well-
economic development and is staying very busy these days. Something about housing.
A little bit about housing. Well, I just wanted to offer for those 2 members, if you would like a more granular briefing about what the department does, please reach out to us. We can show you the organizational chart and really give you a deep understanding of the relatively small agency we are that does a great deal in this space. With me today are Director TJ Poor, who heads up our planning operations. And also with us today will be Director Melissa Bailey, who's heading up our Efficiency and Energy Resources Division, a division that is kicking into high gear given the copious federal funding that's coming to the state from the IIJA Act and the IRA Act. We also have with us a familiar face for you, Jim Porter, the Director for Public Advocacy, who is temporarily also heading up the Telecommunications and Connectivity Division at the department because Clay Purvis, the former director, has moved to the federal government, to the National Telecommunications Infrastructure Agency, where he's doing very important work coordinating in New England, specifically for Vermont and New Hampshire, the broadband rollout that we are working on with the CUDs and the Vermont Community Broadband Board, which, as you recall, is embedded at the department. So a smaller cast at the moment, but nonetheless, a lot of work that's being done. The plea that I have for you is this. We are very much at capacity, in my judgment, at the department for what we're doing. And if you are considering legislation this year that would add material responsibilities to the Department of Public Services portfolio, please also consider the additional resources that are needed to do that work. Because this staff has been doing great things, moving great mountains, but they honestly are not in a position to take on yet more important work. And we know there is so much important work that needs to be done in the energy space. What you're going to hear about today is work that TJ and his crew have been doing on the Comprehensive Energy Plan and also on the annual energy report that we've just issued that has a lot of very helpful data to orient you to what's up and what's down in Vermont in the energy space. They have been acting specifically on a recommendation that we had in the comprehensive energy plan about upping Vermont's game on engagement with the public when it comes to designing our decarbonization policy and the like, and viewing our policy initiatives through the lens of equity. I would specifically highlight for you that we've created a position from existing positions in the department that has a person who now vets every policy that we concern ourselves with through a lens of equity and helps the department itself focus on that issue throughout the agency. You will also be hearing a little bit about trending electricity prices and some of the work and how the grid's evolving with the prospect of the Infrastructure Jobs Act on the horizon and being implemented. You'll also hear from Director Bailey about our continuing efficiency evaluation and verification work, the work we've done on building codes updates, how our state energy office is coming to life because of all of that federal aid that I was talking about under IIJA and IRA, and then a little bit about the nexus between transportation and electrification and how we're trying to address some of that through rates and load management. You will also be hearing from Jim Porter about the work that his public advocacy division is doing, and also just a brief reiteration of some of the work that the telecom division continues to do now that we are focused on that work while the VCBB is focusing on the CUD rollout. So unless the committee has questions at this point, I will pass the microphone on to TJ.
Okay, any questions at this point? Not seeing any. And Senator Hinsdale, Commissioner volunteered that if any of the newbies would like a much more in-depth tutorial, they'd be happy to set it up.
I think that would be helpful, maybe even
Excellent.
She loves field trips.
not far.
Absolutely.
No admissions required. Okay, and you need to have the report put back up?
Yes, please. So if Brian, you could pull up the report or the slides and go to slide 3, please.
Now, who is in
Uh,
charge? Is it
so
Bill
we-
or somebody in your office?
Well, somebody in our office, we got the
Okay.
message today or yesterday that we should be
I think
managing
it's-
this ourselves.
I
So we're
think
trying to
it
do
is
that.
Probably you have more control. Yeah,
Right, it'll
Okay.
match up to, a little easier to match up to what we're talking about. So if you could go to slide 3 there, Brian, that would be great. So for the record, TJ Four, I'm the Director of Regulated Utility Planning at the Public Service Department. For those of you who don't know me, I started at the department over 15 years ago as a staffer in energy efficiency, moved into planning, a lot of economic cost benefit analysis. I left for a little while to manage power supply for Vermont Public Power Supply Authority and came back a few years ago in a leadership role at the department. In the planning division, I start with the comprehensive energy plan, not because we have done the plan since then. It came out since we've seen you last. It came out in January of 2022, but we're busy implementing the plan and different aspects of the plan. That plan is directed, it implements our state energy policy, which is articulated in 30 VSA 202A, and tries to balance security, affordability, reliability, greenhouse gas emission reductions to put forth a policy that meets Vermonters' needs. And so the plan is out and we're busy implementing it. Part of this is, part of our requirements is to update the plan every year, or to provide provide an annual energy report, a report on the plan every year. We just submitted that report this past weekend, and it should be posted to your committee site, and I can send a copy of that to you if that's useful.
yeah, if you send it to Jill, it would be
I
up.
did send it to
Okay.
Jill, but so it should be up.
It's up there.
And with that annual energy report also becomes a report specifically on net metering and a report on the renewable energy standard, kind of a status of where things are, compliance with the standard, where the rates are and how much net metering has come online. All of this type of information is included in the report. One of the big recommendations of the comprehensive energy plan in the electric sector was to consider our programs, reconsider our renewable energy standard and associated programs like net metering and the standard offer program. And it really recognized that those programs have been created in silos, different intentions at different times, and that we need to go back and revisit how we procure renewable energy in the state to set us up for the next decade plus. And so if you could go to the next slide, the department has started down the path of an engagement process that Commissioner Tierney mentioned. It takes into account one of the themes of the energy plan was equity and just transitions, and it takes into account procedural equity in that we're really trying to build policy in a different way that we have in the past. So in the past, what we've done is, as a state, is say, here's a policy, what do you think, to the public? And we have public hearings where people get 2 minutes to say what they think, and then the policy kind of goes with the usual suspects to debate it. And what we're trying to do now is say, general public, here's the basic information. Please tell us what's important to you in your electric supply and what you want to see going forward. And armed with that information, we hope to then create the policy and then bring it back again to Vermonters and say, did we get it right? This is what we heard, and here's the policy we crafted. Did we get it right? So to that end, we've created an engagement process where we're starting in the next couple of weeks with some educational webinars that are just intended to say, where does our electricity come from now? We have 2. And then the second set of webinars will be, here are the policies that are currently in place that we're then hoping to engage with regional planning commissions and stakeholders through the Climate Council, through the Just Transitions Committee, and the Climate Action Office to do some polling and focused, some focus groups, stakeholder, and really communicate with and engage with Vermonters from different communities, different people than we normally engage with, to get feedback again on really what is important to Vermonters and different groups of Vermonters as we go forward. We then that part is phase 2 of what's on the screen here of the kind of policy and program review, the beginning of that, and then we're hoping to go back, synthesize what we heard, and then develop policy to actually go out and get recommendations on, did we get it right? And so we're taking this process kind of pursuant to the equity theme of the energy plan, pursuant to Act 154 that you all passed last year, to try and really raise up voices of Vermonters in development of policy instead of just kind of hearing what they think after it's made. And so this is a major effort, and honestly, I'm pretty nervous about it. We haven't done this kind of thing. And so we're hopeful, and hopefully we get most of it right.
Well, first of all, I had a Vermont Law School student who did her project on you all having a public engagement plan, and she interviewed some of you, so thank you for being nice to her. And I can share with you her report. It was good. First of all, and I also, second of all, I think it's okay to be nervous, because this is important work, even if you make a mistake or people are angry that they feel like they haven't had this opportunity before. It's just really critical. So the measure of success is not sort of people being angry or feeling like you failed. It's, trying. I know that ANR has put out a draft language access plan. I don't know if you all have a draft language access plan, and as you do your outreach, this may already be on your radar, but I would specifically talk to Virginie Diambu at CBOEO. I mean, it's hard to put out to certain communities just generally, like, please comment on our energy policies, obviously, even if you give them information. Virginie is one of the people who I think was first to point out that there's no word for weatherization in a lot of other languages. There's, a real need to translate culturally what we're talking about here. Even if people care about the environment and want to participate, they're going to need some support in plain English getting involved.
Right, yeah, thank you for that. So we, to my knowledge, the Department of Public Service itself does not have a language access plan. We are connecting with the Climate Action Office and working closely with them, and through the Just Transitions to help us kind of figure out the next steps. We've connected with our Chief Marketing Officer, which they offer some translation services, and and we're looking at the A&R's plan to see what we can adopt for the department and how we can move this forward. In terms of, we have these first webinars, which I think are going to be a challenge, but we're also looking to hire some help going forward and that's in a number of different areas. Like, we don't want to just ask the regional planning commissions to do something. We want to support them to support us to help engage municipalities, engage their constituents who are our constituents. We don't run polls ourselves, and we don't necessarily have the in-house skills to run focus groups. And so getting support, contracted to do that in the spring, I think is going to be key to have it be effective.
Right. And if I could just follow, and I think one of the challenges is where energy fits into people's lives in terms of affordability. Like, we worked on a survey with UVM where they canvassed door to door and found certain communities, are 7 times more likely to forego food, to pay an electricity bill or something, like make a trade-off of that nature. So, sometimes asking the right question about the anxiety people have around their energy use, that kind of stuff is critical. I don't know where that would fit in, but, asking the right questions.
Yeah, absolutely. To the extent we are resourced to do it, we're going to explore whether we can do deliberative polling, which will hopefully kind of have that kind of foundational education building to start, and then so we're not just asking the question, we're building the knowledge base. And I think part of that is not just building the knowledge base for the people participating in the poll, but for us in asking the question as well. So thank you for these suggestions.
I've got one more question, then I'm watching the clock because at 3:30 we have property valuation and review coming in for another. And this will not be the last time we have these people in the room. So Senator Bray.
I'll mostly stow the question for another topic. I'm very curious. We often have such technical conversations about the standard offer, the res, and tier 3, and et cetera, et cetera. But it'll be interested to see what questions become public-facing questions, and then how they translate into what we do at a much more technical level underneath.
Right. I will be interested to see how that works out too. Our initial presentations, I think I'm going to try and test them out on my parents first and see how that goes. I probably don't understand exactly what I do for work, and then and that'll be some initial feedback. But it's going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be difficult. We're going to try.
Thank you for trying. It's important.
So the goal for this is to have recommendations ready for the 2024 legislative session. So that's kind of the timeline, which seems slow and fast at the same time. If you could go to the next slide, please. So I also wanted to just talk a little bit about rates, this being the Senate Finance Committee. This will be new for the folks.
And I like that you said the word balance, because that's always, it's balancing getting more online and balancing the price, which we don't want to disincentivize.
Absolutely, and keeping electric rates low is really critical to meeting our greenhouse gas reduction requirements as we transition. And I wanted to point out rates because we've been spending a lot of time on rate cases. To be honest, a number of our utilities have come in for rate cases. Part of that is due to global events, inflationary pressures, and Russia's war on Ukraine has caused energy prices to go up. On this chart, the green line is Vermont's average monthly retail cost of electricity. This is Department of Energy data monthly. This is all sectors. And you can see Vermont's average has increased. I don't want to cast any illusions that it hasn't gone up, but it has gone up and more steadily with less volatility than other states in New England.
I was in Massachusetts this fall, and I've heard it from people who live there, have property there, that their electric rates are going up significantly, like 300%.
Right.
They're deregulated, I believe. I think the rest of New England, we chose not to deregulate. But I'm assuming, given inflation and the cost of natural gas, and our utilities do have to buy stuff off the grid, that when they go in for another rate change, that we're likely to see a blip in that green line.
Well, so we've had maybe a half a dozen utilities file for rate cases, and they're in the last 9 months, and they're in the range of 4% to 14%. So not 300% like other states are seeing, not 100%. And part of that is exactly what you alluded to, Chair Cummings, is that Vermont remains a vertically integrated state while the rest of the region has restructured. And so that just means that Vermont utilities can own generation or contract long-term with generation. They can own transmission, and they can have retail customers and sell. So all phases, which are separated in other states. And in other states, as part of that separation, those entities that are providing the energy supply to the retail service, they're only allowed to enter into 6-month or 1-year contracts, short-term contracts. So when those contracts come up, they're subject to whatever the market is at that time. And that's why you see a lot of spikes and ups and downs in the chart there. Whereas Vermont can enter long-term contracts. So we don't, when we have a contract come off the books, or for the part of our demand that is not, already contracted for, or, have generation to meet it, that portion of the supply is subject to the volatility. But it's on an annual basis, 10-15% of our total supply. So it mitigates the volatility, and those market effects are lagged. And so they do happen slowly and less so. If there's a huge drop in the market price, we won't see big drops in rates for the same reason, because we've contracted long-term. But we can talk a lot more about this, but I wanted to just highlight for you that we have been working on rate cases. Our role is to make sure that the utilities power supply, we review, their rates, and we review all of their assumptions for and calculations, what's happened in the past, and the known eventual adjustments for the future.
Is the exposure for most Vermont utilities to the volatility in the ISO region just natural gas for natural gas power generation? Is that how it flows through to them?
It's whatever resource sets the price in any given hour, which is usually natural gas. It's not always. And so so generally the answer is yes to that. And some utilities that have more supply in the course of a year, than their demand, are seeing the opposite effect. Actually, it's a downward pressure because they're selling into the market at these high rates, and so. But it is most of the time the price is set by natural gas, and so that's what's setting the creating volatility.
Senator,
20 years ago, Vermont had the highest electric rates in wind. Today, it appears that we are next to the lowest and have been for the last few years. To what do we attribute that?
I think there's a lot of different things that contribute to it. One, as I mentioned, just being vertically integrated, long-term contracts. In the last several years, the market prices have gone up, and we've been relatively stable market prices. I think our energy efficiency investments have had a role to play there. Director Baylor can talk about energy efficiency a little bit more when she's up. I think we've done a good job in planning our transmission and distribution grid and looking for non-wires alternatives to constructing those wires, whether it be energy efficiency or generation resources. And so I don't think there's necessarily any one answer, but several.
I'm going to move us along because we are not going to get Commissioner Bailey.
I only have one more slide, and this one will be fast. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk a little bit. So I'll skip the top part of this. There's a lot of text, I apologize. It's just about integrated transmission and distribution planning. The other main theme of the energy plan is grid evolution. How are we going to evolve the grid to ensure all the electrification that's happening happens at least cost and without unintended consequences.
Does anyone, and I'm going to ask Green Mountain Power too and the other utilities, has anyone done a calculation for if we go completely electric, how many solar fields are we going to need? Or how many, I guess it's, how much electricity, which translates into how many acres. Right now it's solar panels.
So the energy plan modeling and the pathways report estimated the generation that would be needed. It did not, under different scenarios, and those can include load management scenarios where you could avoid some of that generation, but it did not translate that into how many acres of Vermont or.
Send that report over and let us know where we can get it.
Yeah. I will do that. The last thing I'll mention is the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. I won't go bullet by bullet here, but we have a number of sources of funding that are aimed at grid resilience investments. So reducing the number of outages, reducing the duration of outages, and
That was my next question, given the experience several Saturdays ago.
right. It was a good holiday surprise. So there are funds that are going to flow through our office that we're directing in this area, and also towards load management as we electrify to better manage that load. So another time I'm happy to go into more details about the specifics of those funding sources.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
I'm sure we.
So might use more or less electricity today than it did 22 years ago.
22. I don't know. We've generally been about the same. So year by year it fluctuates a little bit, but if you look at the annual energy report, there's a chart for our electric demand statewide, our retail sales statewide, and it kind of arcs and comes back down, and it's, I would say, roughly the same if I have the mental image of that chart in my head correct.
It's certainly counterintuitive.
That we have not increased.
Yeah,
Well,
Population has gone up.
in,
Spend more money. Everything else has increased.
well, we've done a very good job with our energy efficiency programs. I mean, you think of a 80 watt incandescent bulb is now 4 watts or, maybe 11 watts. And multiply that by all of the light bulbs in the state, and it's a big difference. I think,
So all of this that's come in.
I'm not used to
I
things.
mean, we used to
so
have
well.
pencils and paper
Right.
over here, now we have electric
and
devices.
that's part of the competing demand. I would say that's roughly flat. Is that right? Thank you, Senator Bragg.
Everybody's ready to get it.
There's that chart.
But that is despite the increased use of electric to everything right now.
Correct, yeah, additional, flat screen TVs and computers, et cetera.
We're getting more done on less.
Okay, I want to get Director Bithell now.
All right, thank you.
So Director, is this a new job or is this, we just haven't seen you in so long and you've really been at this job for 3 years?
This is a relatively new job, so thank you, Melissa Bailey, Director of Efficiency and Energy Resources with the Department of Public Service. I started in this role last March.
Okay, because before that you were the independent power.
Yes, so previously 10 years with Vermont Public Power Supply Authority, working with the small municipal utilities in Vermont on power supply and regulatory affairs.
So she's been a regular in here for a long time.
Friend of the committee, I like to think. So yes, as the commissioner mentioned, I'm relatively new to this job, coming in during a time when there's an influx of federal funding has been extremely interesting. When our challenge has really been to start getting money out the door and working with resource constraints. Oh, thank you, Brian. So this is the main responsibilities for my division. We're a team of 7, including me. We have technical staff who handle the evaluation, measurement, verification of savings required by the efficiency utilities, as well as the distribution utilities running Tier 3 programs. The technical staff also bear responsibility for conducting the building code updates on the residential and commercial side. Those updates happen every 3 years, and we're at the tail end of that process right now. One will be filed most likely in February with LCAR. The Efficiency Division also serves as the State Energy Office. This is a designation from the Department of Energy. We receive some nominal funding every year that helps fund some of our operations. And I'll talk a little bit more about the activities we're undertaking in our state energy office role. And then, as the commissioner also mentioned, we follow transportation as it relates to electric usage and the electrification of the transportation sector, specifically looking at rate design and load management strategies to minimize the costs on the electric system as we make this transition to electric vehicles. So next slide, please. At the core of what we do really is relates to oversight of the efficiency utilities. And just a reminder to the committee that Vermont has 3 energy efficiency utilities, Efficiency Vermont being the largest with an annual budget this year of about $55 million. Burlington Electric Department offers efficiency services within their own service territory, and then Vermont Gas Systems as of 2015 also became an efficiency utility for their natural gas customers. Burlington Electric's budget for this year is about $3 million.
Always before that's been Senator Sears juggling his keys on the floor.
Senator Sears.
Senator Sears.
Highlander, silver. Handicap plates.
Could be.
And Vermont Gas Systems has a budget of about $5.7 million this year. And again, these entities are funded through what we call a system benefits charge, right? The energy efficiency charge on everybody's electric bill.
Email next door and ask if Senator Sears has a silver Highlander. We always has a license plate.
It's on YouTube.
He's earned the designation as the person most likely to set off. Stop. Okay.
So we participate in the budget setting process, of course, for the energy efficiency utilities. The PSD department aims to maximize the customer value of those investments and efficiency. We're in that process right now. The demand resources plan proceeding is ongoing. And just as another reminder, the state policy around electric efficiency is that we set our energy efficiency charge to acquire all reasonably available cost-effective electric efficiency savings. And just to note that, again, this is largely focused on electric efficiency rather than thermal. Of course, when we talk about thermal, we're talking about the fossil fuels used to heat buildings. And the majority of our investments, if you total up the budget numbers that I gave you that aren't on the slide, it's about 64 million in efficiency investments this year, and about 14 million of that is focused on the thermal sector. So,
Okay, because we did a couple of experiments. We allowed a certain amount of the electric efficiency money to be used thermally. And then we had a couple of businesses that, and I think it would be interesting to get a report back on what those experiments taught us or what we learned.
Those are tons of experiments. I'm not sure the time was run out yet on those.
They may, yeah, we extended some of them last year because COVID messed things up. No, they may not have run out.
So, yeah, I think you're referring to what we call Act 151, which is still ongoing, that authorize the efficiency utilities to invest in transportation and thermal during this current 3-year period that we're in. So we're on this 3-year cycle, and that will
So it's
run
not
through the
in
end of 2023. And I think the second one is the energy savings account pilot. I didn't cover
Yes.
those on my slides because I was trying to keep this as a general overview, but happy to come back and talk about those.
Yeah, I think just those are things we did, and just to get not a final update, but just progress report on how it's going, because if I'm remembering correctly, what we've been hearing is we've gotten most of the low hanging fruit in electric efficiency. And we have a policy that says we don't cross subsidize. However, that is our policy and we can change it. But, you know, where do we go? We are charging an efficiency charge on the electric lines. But at what point have we gotten all we can reasonably expect? And that's your value. We just do the enforcement.
There'll be a bill to extend that pilot. And the rationale for it was that we didn't have a way to start. There was a way to basically get started on thermal and transportation efficiency work when you didn't have funding, the named funding stream forward. The idea that at some point, we would figure out how to fund that through a substantive, long life bill. And but meanwhile, rather than wait to do that, wait to get started for a full-fledged bill like the Affordable Heat Act or a transportation bill that's kind of comparable to it. He said, let's get some on-the-ground experience. And that's why it got started.
So there'll be a bill this year.
Yes, because, we can test it. It's drafted, it's just not introduced. And it's Christie Vermont and Burlington Electric are the folks who have mostly stepped forward to say they'd like to continue the pilot because they see good reasons to, but it's not a vetted concept yet. The question is the same one, we'll have the same one that the chair articulated, but what are we learning? Should we keep on going?
Okay.
And just closing over.
Things are evolving.
Things are evolving on the energy savings account specifically. So that was the pilot that allows certain customers, commercial and customers of a certain size, to essentially opt out of the Efficiency Vermont programs and operate their own efficiency investment. So we did owe a report to the legislature on January 15th. So that's been filed and does have some recommendations for next steps. That was a working group report, not just a public.
We'll find that and post it up on our website or our
in natural resources, we've asked year after year, how much, what is the efficiency utility buying electricity at? And we can't get an answer. From IBM, we can't get answers. Or we don't get answers.
Okay,
We asked again this year.
okay.
So the cost of, well, anyway, I believe there's some follow-up sent to the Senate Natural Resources topic. but
Yeah,
it
this
was-
is one of those that they do the background and then if it comes to a rule to utilities, it bounces over here. So it's a gray line.
Well, and just to facilitate, Ms. Bailey followed up on your question from before, I don't know if you've seen it yet. There's an email from the department, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, but
Where we have,
Okay,
So just, yeah, ballpark, the cost at which Efficiency Vermont is able to acquire savings has been about 4 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And then based on historical data, those savings are probably getting a little more expensive as we move forward, but that's
if you have to buy electricity, what does it cost per kilowatt hour?
going to punt that to, well, to Director Porteous closer to the current market prices for like wholesale prices for electricity.
Right, so that 4 to 5 cent a kilowatt hour is over the lifetime of a measure, so over 10 years. So if you're buying electricity, it depends, right? You know, this instant, it is probably 10 cents a kilowatt hour. In the summer, it is 3 cents a kilowatt hour. Historically, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the annual average price was 3 cents a kilowatt hour. But you get more with energy efficiency than just energy. You get avoided transmission and distribution. You get avoided capacity costs. So all of those numbers are some of them are estimates, and so there's not an exact answer. So an efficiency investment today, knowing what that's going to, what it costs, but knowing what it's going to save, it depends on when that investment operates, when the lights, are on basically, and what the prices will be at in the future for the next 10 years. And so there's like a range of answers. So that's probably why you don't get one single answer on that.
thank you. Good guess, $30.76.
What's that?
The price right now.
Right now? Okay, well, did I say 100? Well, it's cheap today, I guess.
Cheap at the moment.
Yeah.
okay.
This feels like it would fall into your body of work, but as the Inflation Reduction Act benefits come out and they're for individual consumers, do you feel like you and your department have been well equipped to help people know where to go to get the maximum benefit?
So I was down at Killington this morning at a conference that was on the IRA and Inflation Reduction Act deployment. I think the question, to a large extent, and I do have a slide on that, but we don't know yet what DOE's guidelines will be for deploying those funds. So we know we're poised to, yes, U.S. Department of Energy. So we know we're poised to receive $60 million or so just for residential, essentially weatherization, heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. But we don't have a lot of clarity around the requirements for deploying those funds. So to your question about whether we're equipped, I think some of that information isn't yet available. We did talk with DOE today about that in a dream state, in an ideal state, a customer could go online to a web portal and say, this is where I live, this is my housing conditions, this is my income, what's available to me, because there is an immense amount of money available. And I haven't even focused on the tax credit side of things. I mean, it's overwhelming for those of us in the industry, and it's certainly overwhelming for a household. So in terms of, do we have adequate resources? It's a challenge for sure. We're trying to hire right now to help.
I think the short answer is no.
But you're doing the best you can without.
That's right.
We're doing the best that we can with what we have. We are trying to hire. We've got some ARPA money to hire, and again, it's to implement federal funding. Really, we need more expertise. We need more bodies.
Well, count on us to help spread the word if there's calculators.
Thank you. Yeah, and I can just cover the IRA quickly now. So DOE expects that. They don't expect to issue their guidance till the spring. And they said as of today, ideally they'd get money flowing before next heating system. So that's, I think at the soonest we would even see money flowing to states would be at the end of this current year. So, and we field questions, our Consumer Affairs Division gets questions almost every day about IRA and when can I get this money and when can I change my water heater over. So there's definitely a mismatch between the excitement around the money as the passage of IRA in August and that lag time before it actually flows to customers. So Brian, can you forward? I think I have 2 more slides for you all. So this is going back to the ARPA investments. This is just a reminder, this is going to be repetitive for the folks in Senate Natural, but last year we did have 67 million allocated to come to the department for climate mitigation investments. And this is just kind of a status update. 35 million will be is being granted to Efficiency Vermont to do moderate income weatherization. So weatherization for households that are just above the income that qualifies for the weatherization assistance program.
And what is moderate income for a family of 2? I'm still thinking about seniors, which is a fairly large portion.
I should have those numbers more readily available. It's so moderate income is between 80 and 120% of area median income. For a family of 2, I'm cautious to speculate.
I mean, when we talk about moderate income, there are people who think they're of moderate income who find out that in the national scale, they're either high or low. And I think if we could put some numbers with that, it would help people understand what they might qualify for.
Yeah.
I don't know what Washington County is something like 62,000 for AMI. So 1.2 times that is 74K.
74.
Yeah.
And so all of these investments were targeted, through the legislative language that you all passed last year for low to moderate income households. So these all would be for households up to 120% of that area median income, which again ranges slightly around the state in the different counties. Home electric upgrades is for upgrading your electrical service behind the meter so that you can accommodate the additional load for a heat pump or an electric vehicle or any load. We estimate somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of Vermont households will need to upgrade their electric service if they are going to electrify in the future. And so this is sometimes an unexpected cost for households.
I wouldn't mind to put an electric dryer. I guess they didn't do that in 1952.
Housing stock that we have here. Again, some additional money to put in heat pump water heaters. We expect that'll probably cover about 1,500 to 2,000 water heaters for low and moderate income households, and 7 million to support storage installations. So we're thinking of that as in-home batteries and potentially some utility scale batteries, but with a focus on home batteries and load management. And so that's actually investments for the utilities that don't currently have load management technology to install that and to install the platforms to manage that. I know we're getting a little bit technical, but this has to do with managing the load on the grid to minimize costs.
As we do the upgrades for wires to the house, panels, stuff like that, are utilities seeing similar pressure so that they have to do transformers and/or wires to serve those loads, or it's mostly on the home side, and so we're letting utilities fend for themselves, but we're helping out?
So we are seeing the need to have utility and infrastructure investments on the distribution system, so upgrading transformers and yes, GMP came out and they upgraded the line that goes from the transformer to my home when I upgraded my.
Yeah, I had to have a transformer put behind mine.
So for the most part, the utilities are covering those costs. I'm not sure the extent to which they're able to use any of the IIJA funding for their system costs, but there are costs. Most of our utilities are covering those. Some utilities do put that on the customer. And that's something we're exploring, whether there should be a statewide policy around that. Next slide, please. Brian, this is probably mine. So this is, I have one more after this, but this is just what I was mentioning about the Inflation Reduction Act. Again, there are two programs that are both going to bring substantial funding to Vermont. One is focused on electrification, so rebates for things like heat pumps and heat pump water heaters that go up to $14,000 per household if you're low to moderate income. So very generous rebates there. And then the second, actually the first program, the homes program, is really around weatherization and doing comprehensive improvements to homes. So these are programs that can be layered on top of what we're already doing. We already have some weatherization programs in the state. We already have electrification rebates from our distribution utilities, and this will be added funding that can be infused into the system. And then my final slide, I will just quickly touch on what I'll call miscellaneous state energy office activities. This is just, I mentioned we are designated as the energy office for Vermont by the Department of Energy. That typically comes with $200,000 to $300,000 a year of funding, which is really used for staffing. Under the IIJA, we will receive an additional $3 million over 5 years. So we really approached that, looking at filling gaps and looking at initiatives that might not otherwise be funded. So this is just a list of some of the top priorities that we're going to use over the next 5 years, what we're going to use that $3 million for. Development of a community engagement plan, again, consistent with what Director Fuller was talking about, outreach around renewable energy program redesign, and the environmental justice bill. Of course, we did not receive any staffing or funding associated with the department's obligations under the EJ bill. So, and one of those is to develop a community engagement plan. So recognizing that was already a department priority. It was in our comprehensive energy plan, and the environmental justice bill makes that a requirement. So spending some resources to develop that plan and essentially using this renewable energy engagement process as a test case for to get some learning around how to engage with the public. Weatherization workforce training, I don't think I need to say much more. That, you know, workforce is a challenge, and we're talking about scaling up the need for weatherization investments over the next 10 to 20 years. We've been doing maybe 2,000 units a year, and to reach our goals need to do 15 or 20,000 units a year, and we just don't have the workforce to accomplish that work. Even if you put aside the funding concerns, we need to get more people into that field. So we'll be funding some training in cooperation with Efficiency Vermont. And then we set aside some of our money. This is not, there aren't grants available now. I have innovation grants up there. This is just setting aside some of the money that will be available to, you know, communities, town energy committees, RPCs, and more grassroots groups, recognizing that we don't have all the ideas about what needs to happen in the energy space and in the energy transformation. And so making some funding available for groups to come to us and propose projects that are consistent with our energy plan goals. So that's all I have, and hopefully I keep you on schedule.
Yes.
This Maine's electricity is less expensive than ours. They have a more sophisticated efficiency program than we have, and if not, what accounts for their electricity being less expensive than Vermont's?
I'd be speculating about Maine, and their energy efficiency utility was modeled, I think, after Vermont's efficiency utility. So I think they have similar programs there, and I would be speculating about why their rates are slightly lower than ours. I don't know if
That's the
CJ
question.
has anything. I don't know. If
Yeah, I think it has to do with the mix of embedded contracts and resources in their territory. There's some older, large hydro facilities. There's a lot of wind projects in Maine, and I think that all contributes to it. And if you're interested, I could get you a more specific answer and follow up.
I'm very interested in if they're kicking our butts. Is it because they get bigger booths, or a different, something that's different that we're not accounting for?
I thought I'd heard that there was a pipeline that dead ended there. It was supposed to go to Boston and never made it, and they had an overabundance of natural gas? That was an explanation I got several years ago.
So I can follow up, but I
Yeah,
don't know
just
the
check.
answer to that. Yeah.
We don't like to be beaten.
No, and I think over the last couple of years, Vermont is competing well here.
Yeah, we are.
If you look at that chart.
Send your chicken.
I have a municipality in my district named Burlington that's council recently passed a resolution calling on their legislators to look at funding public transportation through the recommendations of a study that called for a tax on our public utilities or an additional fee. I understand from a quiet conversation here that this chart is on the base rate and not necessarily the effective rate and additional fees and surcharges. If that's the case, I'd love to know how we compare looking at the entire baked-in cost on average of each of our electrical, just so that I can go back to them as they try to advocate for the $20 million to come from this source.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
And then we
and
got
just-
one more witness.
Just to clarify, the chart, as I understand it, is based on the utilities' total revenue, including kind of their customer charge, that fixed charge, and the variable rate. It would not include things like the energy efficiency charge. So I guess I'm re-emphasizing what you said, and I can, see if there's numbers available that are all in.
Okay, we still have this reporter to hear from. And I don't know if he's here.
Yeah, he's on Zoom.
He is on Zoom, okay, I'm just not seeing him. Jim, where are you?
I'm here. I can hear you and see you.
No, now we can see you. You got to
Okay.
replace the commissioner. Do you need this report?
I don't.
Okay, so we can take that down. Whoever's there, you are. Hello. Okay, floor is yours.
So thank you. I'm Jim Porter. I've been with the department for about 18 years and had several titles since I've been there. Currently, I'm the director for public advocacy, which is the legal division. Including me, we have 8 lawyers and 2 support staff. Also within that division is the finance and econ division, which, as their name implies, they are experts in finance and economics, and they participate in all of our rate proceedings.
Okay. Now you are going black. You're starting to look like Boris Karloff. We see your head, but your background is, it's getting, yeah, keep going.
Is
We
it
can
any
still
better?
see you.
It's probably better to see me shrouded in the black background anyway, but
As long as your house and office isn't on fire, we're good. Okay.
so we litigate all of the cases before the Public Utility Commission, and currently, and we're a statutory party to all proceedings before the PUC. I would say currently the lion's share of the cases we're handling are solar siting cases, 248A, which is cell tower siting cases. There are just a huge amount of both of those types of cases. And as you've heard earlier in the presentation, there are a good many rate cases happening right now due to, as TJ said, I think, events in the world. I think by the end of this year, every electric utility will have been in the past 18 months, certainly for a rate increase.
Yeah.
Any questions just generally about the structure of the public advocacy division? And I can touch on telecom before we run out of time.
Okay, now 248A is up for renewal, right? So we will have you in or whomever to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. As you say, it's set to sunset this year. And so I expect we'll be hearing more about 248A before the session's out.
Expect we will. 248A deciding
I hear nothing ever sunsets in the legislature.
Well, we can always do away with the sunset, but that does away with our control. So anyway, we will be discussing that because was it how long? 2 years sunset? It wasn't that long ago that we.
I think it was, I think one time it may have been 4 years, but I think you're right. I think it's been a 2-year sunset, maybe.
Yeah, I do too. Because it was just recent, I think just before COVID that we dealt with it. Okay. Yeah.
If there's no more questions about that, I'll just briefly cover the telecom division. Which is, I think June mentioned earlier, Clay left and went to the NTIA, and I'm hoping we'll have a replacement soon. But the telecom division, they do the technical and engineering reviews for all of the 248A petitions. They provide testimony in all cases before the PUC that involve telecom and cable, such as cable renewals. And they spend a good bit of their time with broadband mapping. And this past year, they also oversaw with the help of AOT, the wireless mapping, which I think we have provided you with that report, which it's pretty interesting reading to see how that came out this year, but gave a really nice snapshot of cell coverage based on literally driving however many thousands of miles of the Vermont roadways.
We did not agree with the federal map, and Clay drove every road, I think, in this state and mapped where he did and did not get cell service. We are the envy of the nation, I think, on this. It is very detailed.
I think that's right, and you are correct. They very much did not mirror some of the other maps out there.
Okay. Okay. Is that it?
That's it in a nutshell. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. And for those that 248A, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the siting rule which allows cell and telecom towers not to have to go through Act 250. They go through this 248A process. Am I right on that?
That's exactly right. What it did was provided another way that a petitioner could go as opposed to Act 250. And I guess one thing I would clarify when I talk about how busy we are with these petitions, 248A also encompasses a subpart which is called de minimis modifications. And so the vast majority of petitions we get are not brand new cell towers. They tend to be the swapping out or upgrading of equipment on existing telecom facilities. And in my experience, 248A has been very popular. I'm familiar with one time when a company chose the Act 250 route as opposed to 248A since I've been here. So it has been very popular for the providers.
And we did a lot to make the appeals to the PUC more user-friendly, because traditionally hearings before the Public Utility Commission involved utilities and utility lawyers. And when we started putting cell towers and things in people's backyard, people wanted to have access to the board, and we did a fair amount to take that very legalistic structure and make it more user-friendly. And maybe we'll get an update on how it's working.
You did, and if I could just add, you also added a few years back a provision where these companies have to provide a notice that they intend to file a petition, and you gave the department the authority to retain experts during the notice period. And so frequently, if a community gets a notice of a cell tower installation that's being proposed and there is dissension, we can ask for a hearing, and we've had pretty good success, depending upon the company, of working with the community, and seeing if there's alternate siting before they actually come in and do the petition. And so I think that has worked fairly well, especially in instances where these things are very controversial from day one.
Okay, thank you. We will have you back because 248 is gonna come somewhere, but it'll come here. Not sure what bill, but we will be talking more about all of these issues. So thank everybody. Our
Thank
next
you.
witnesses are in the hall. And we are going to common levels of appraisal. And
That's it. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Still in session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, this is a milestone. I think it's the first
All
time
yours.
she's testified. Yeah. I was wondering where everybody was going to be testifying from, saying. It says we're still online.
Yeah, I'm supposed to do one of the new timestamp for the next meeting, so I'm gonna start it.